The summer of 2020 was a crucible for America. The death of George Floyd, a black man killed by Minneapolis police, ignited nationwide protests. Cities across the country, including Seattle, Washington, became stages for outrage and demands for change. Amidst this backdrop of raw emotion and social upheaval, a unique and controversial event unfolded in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood, the emergence of the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, or CHAZ. For a brief period, this six-block area became a self-declared autonomous zone, free from formal law enforcement. It was a bold experiment, a microcosm of both the hopes and the challenges of a movement grappling with systemic racism and police brutality. The creation and eventual dismantling of CHAZ would leave an indelible mark on Seattle and spark nationwide debate about protest policing and the very nature of public space. The story of CHAZ is not just about a physical space, it's about the aspirations and anxieties of a generation. It's about the search for a more just and equitable society and the complexities that arise when ideals clash with reality. The events of that summer continue to resonate, posing questions about the role of protest in a democracy and the ongoing struggle for racial justice in America. To understand CHAZ, we need to rewind the tape. The social and political landscape of America in 2020 was primed for unrest. Years of documented police brutality against Black Americans, coupled with a growing awareness of systemic racism, had created a powder keg of frustration and anger. Groups like Black Lives Matter or BLM and Antifa, often demonized in certain circles, were at the forefront of demanding accountability and justice. BLM, a decentralized movement, arose in response to the acquittal of George Zimmerman in the shooting of Trayvon Martin in 2012. Its core message is simple yet powerful. Black Lives Matter. Antifa, short for anti-fascist, is a loosely organized movement with roots in opposing European fascism. In the American context, Antifa activists often confront far-right and white supremacist groups. In the wake of George Floyd's death, these movements gained renewed urgency and visibility. Protests erupted across the country, demanding an end to police brutality, defunding of police departments, and investment in marginalized communities. The response from law enforcement was often met with heavy-handed tactics, further fueling the flames of anger and distrust. It was in this charged atmosphere that the seeds of CHAZ were sown. The spark that ignited CHAZ was the Seattle Police Department's decision to abandon its East Precinct building on June 8, 2020. This tactical retreat came after days of intense protests and clashes between demonstrators and police. The SPD, facing mounting pressure and criticism for its use of tear gas and other crowd control measures, decided to vacate the building in an attempt to de-escalate the situation. However, the vacuum left by the police was quickly filled. Protesters, emboldened by the SPD's retreat, took over the surrounding area and declared it the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. The creation of CHAZ was spontaneous, a product of the moment's energy and the desire to create a space free from police presence. The zone, spanning several city blocks, became a hub of protest activity, political discourse, and artistic expression. There was a sense of euphoria and possibility in those early days. CHAZ, for many, represented a chance to experiment with alternative forms of community organization and governance. Free food was distributed, teach-ins and political discussions were held, and art installations adorned the streets. The Black Lives Matter movement was central to CHAZ, with its demands for racial justice and police reform shaping the zone's ethos. Life inside CHAZ was a mix of idealism, improvisation, and at times chaos. With no formal leadership structure, decision-making was often decentralized and ad hoc. General assemblies open to all were held to discuss issues and make collective decisions. Food and medical supplies were provided through a combination of donations and volunteer efforts. Art became a central feature of CHAZ, with murals, sculptures, and performance art popping up throughout the zone. The area around the abandoned East Precinct building, dubbed the No Cop Co-op, transformed into a community center and gathering space. There was a palpable sense of community and shared purpose, as people from all walks of life came together to create what they hoped would be a more just and equitable society. However, CHAZ was not without its challenges. The lack of formal governance structures led to confusion and disagreements over decision-making processes. There were tensions between those who wanted to maintain a peaceful protest and those who advocated for more confrontational tactics. questions about security, sanitation, and the long-term sustainability of the zone remained unanswered. Section 5. Shadows in the Utopia, Crime and Controversy within CHAZ. As CHAZ entered its second week, cracks began to appear in the facade of unity and harmony. The absence of formal law enforcement, while intended to create a space free from police brutality, also created an environment where crime could flourish. Reports of assaults, robberies, and property damage within the zone began to surface. The most serious incident occurred on June 20, 2020, when a shooting left one teenager dead and another critically injured. The shooting, which took place within the boundaries of CHAZ, sent shockwaves through the community and raised serious questions about the ability of the zone to provide basic safety and security. The perpetrators of the shooting were never apprehended, fueling criticism that CHAZ had become a haven for lawlessness. In addition to crime, CHAZ was plagued by internal disputes and allegations of intimidation and violence. There were reports of self-appointed security forces operating within the zone, enforcing their own rules and meting out their own form of justice. Business owners within CHAZ complained of harassment and extortion, claiming they were being pressured to make donations or face retaliation. Section 6. A City Divided, Seattle grapples with CHAZ. The events within CHAZ divided Seattle and sparked a national debate about the limits of protest and the role of law enforcement. Supporters of CHAZ saw it as a powerful symbol of resistance, a necessary response to systemic racism and police brutality. They argued that the zone provided a space for marginalized communities to make their voices heard and to experiment with alternative forms of community building. Opponents, however, viewed CHAZ as a dangerous experiment in anarchy, a lawless enclave that threatened public safety and undermined the rule of law. They pointed to the rise in crime, the shooting incidents, and the allegations of intimidation as evidence that CHAZ had descended into chaos. The debate over CHAZ became increasingly polarized, reflecting the deep divisions within American society over issues of race, policing, and the role of government. The city of Seattle found itself caught in the middle of this maelstrom. Mayor Jenny Durkan initially expressed sympathy for the protesters and their demands for police reform. However, as conditions within CHAZ deteriorated, pressure mounted on the city to take action. The mayor faced criticism from both sides, those who accused her of being too lenient with the protesters, and those who condemned her for not doing enough to address the concerns of residents and business owners within the zone. Section 7. The Walls Come Down, the End of an Experiment. By late June 2020, the writing was on the wall for CHAZ. The city, facing mounting pressure to restore order, announced that it would be dismantling the zone. On July 1, 2020, Seattle police moved in to clear the area, dismantling barricades and arresting several protesters who refused to leave. The operation, which took place in the early morning hours, was largely peaceful, though some clashes between police and protesters did occur. The dismantling of CHAZ marked the end of a tumultuous chapter in Seattle's history. The zone, which had begun as a symbol of hope and resistance, had devolved into a source of fear and division. The experiment in self-governance, while noble in its intentions, had ultimately failed to live up to its lofty ideals. The legacy of CHAZ, however, would continue to be debated long after the barricades were gone. Section 8. CHAZ, in retrospect, a legacy of questions. The CHAZ experiment left an indelible mark on Seattle and sparked a nationwide conversation about the nature of protest, the role of law enforcement, and the challenges of achieving meaningful social change. The events of that summer continue to resonate, raising more questions than answers. Did CHAZ achieve its goals? Was it a success or a failure? The answers to these questions are complex and depend on whom you ask. For some, CHAZ represented a powerful expression of dissent, a necessary response to systemic injustice. For others, it was a cautionary tale about the dangers of utopian thinking and the importance of the rule of law. Regardless of one's perspective, there's no denying that CHAZ was a significant moment in American history. It highlighted the raw emotions and deep divisions within American society, exposing the fault lines of race, class, and power that continue to shape our nation. The legacy of CHAZ is a reminder that the fight for social justice is complex, messy, and often fraught with unintended consequences. It is a legacy that will continue to be debated and dissected for years to come.